Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me down there in Decatur, Georgia, my good friend, Pelley University of North Georgia alumni, and host of Voice of College Football, the Georgia edition, Matt Green. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is good to be back with you. SEC championship. Man, what a game, what a weekend of college football it was, sir.
Oof. Like I said before we got started here, if I was a Georgia fan, I would be fuming going into, you get a bye, which at least you get that, but man, you get an SEC title. I didn't think they were going to win as we predicted here. Some craziness. I was right, though, and I wonder what would have happened here with Barry Odom, because I wondered if UNLV won that game on Friday night against Boise. I was like, Barry Odom's in the mix for some key jobs. Like, what? Are we going to have a sitting head coach leave and skip the playoff? We were very close to that happening, Matt Green, on Friday night, as it turned out.
Yeah, that I don't know. There's still going to be craziness. There's still going to be some craziness that's going to happen. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, absolutely. Well, Matt Green, there's a lot to get to here, but we have to start off with our instant reactions to the CFP bracket being set, and we'll start with what the bracket means for both Tennessee and Georgia. So starting things off for Tennessee, though, with Tennessee getting the 9 seed, going to Columbus. If they win that game, they go to Pasadena to face Oregon in the Rose Bowl. It's the most arduous path, I think, of any team in the playoff. I think there's no question about it. If Tennessee runs the gauntlet, it's an all-time. It won't be topped in future college football playoffs if Tennessee were to run this kind of gauntlet, because you're looking at, you might potentially play all of Texas, Georgia, Oregon, and Ohio State in this.
I mean, you're the 9 seed. It's not supposed to be easy for the 9 seed.
That's the whole thing. It doesn't make any sense, though, across the board, because Tennessee got kind of punished here in a spot. Like, I'm not even going to get into the part about because SMU, right? SMU loses in the ACC title game, and they get the 11th spot. So they're going to Penn State, which is a better spot and a better side of the graphic, because they also would go to Boise if they were to win that game. You look at some teams and like where certain teams fell in the bracket and who gets go where. Indiana goes 11-1. They should not have been ahead of Tennessee at this point. They were behind Tennessee as they were, but they get to go to Notre Dame, which is a much better place to play than going to Columbus. And it's more of Tennessee got put in this purgatory, this bad situation of being there. 8-9 is just the worst place to be in this format. So it helped. Like, the biggest winners this weekend were Texas and Penn State, who are now the favorites to make the college football playoff final based on their path. Like, Penn State, their path is so clear for Penn State to run the gauntlet and be in this national championship game. Like, everything broke right, and they just lost their Big Ten title game. Texas lost, and their path is unbelievable, because if they just beat Clemson at home and then they get Boise like in a bowl game, like, their path is unbelievable. So the teams that lost the Power 2 conference championship games got better paths to the national championship than the teams that won the games themselves. But Tennessee is in this no man's land here with Ohio State, and their path, like, Tennessee is ranked ahead of that 9 spot. So if you just seeded them 1 through 12, as you should, instead of these automatic qualifiers and everything else, Tennessee would host. This would be a whole thing. But Tennessee's path is ridiculous based on their body of work and what a path is behind them for some other teams.
I think that's it be. What does Tennessee earn? They haven't earned anything.
They have better, like, Indiana has a better path. Indiana should not have a better path than Tennessee. And there's no reseeding. Like, that's the other part of it, is like how reseeding was not involved in this is
How does
ridiculous.
Indiana have a better path going on the road to Notre Dame?
Notre Dame's a much better matchup.
Georgia?
They can absolutely win that game. That's an easier matchup than going to Ohio State.
Tennessee can't beat Ohio State?
Ohio State's way more like the talent level alone. Going to Ohio State versus Notre Dame, there's not one Tennessee fan that feels better about going to Ohio State than Notre Dame.
But
Northern Illinois won in Notre Dame.
But who cares? Like, Tennessee, you're the 9 seed. It should be difficult for the 9 seed to win. Like,
Then have to play Oregon and then have to play Texas and Georgia. Like,
yeah, that's why would you have an easy bracket? You're not one of the elite teams in the sport.
Penn State's behind you. Like, no, hold on. Penn State, like, who lost the conference championship game. But look, if you look at the bracket,
they only lost one game in the regular season. It was to Ohio State.
Sure,
like their 2 losses are two of the best teams out there.
But what's the case for Texas to be over Tennessee with 0 ranked wins and 2 losses?
I mean, the fact that they only had 1 regular season loss and they weren't really penalizing the conference losers that much.
But is there a case that Texas should be ahead of Tennessee right now?
I mean, there's a case that Texas's resume doesn't stack up with a lot of other teams, but that's kind of my point in terms of, like, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth here, because on one side, this is a gauntlet and it's unfair how good these teams are. They're on Oregon's side, but on the other team, it's like, oh, why are these teams ranked ahead? They haven't done anything. Like, Ohio's, it's a brand bias, really. Like, Ohio State.
Well, no, look at the one side. The one side of the graphic, one side of the bracket is Texas, Tennessee, Ohio State, Oregon, and the other side is just Georgia without Carson Beck potentially, Boise State getting a bye, Notre Dame, and Penn State. Like, the path on the other side is significantly easier than the path.
How, though? Tennessee, what is Tennessee? Who have they beaten? They've beaten Alabama and nobody else. Texas has beaten Texas A&M and nobody else. Like, they're a flawed team. Ohio State is a good team, but they've also lost twice, and they got beat by a bad Michigan team. Like, all of those teams are flawed. Like, we feel like talent composite rankings, these are like elite teams, but like Tennessee is not proven to be elite in any way through 12 games. They have a really good defense.
What I'm saying is they should not be going on the road based on who is getting home field. Like, there is a point where they should not be going on the road. Like, Boise State getting a bye, Arizona State getting a bye, and skipping all this with Tennessee having to play in Columbus in the first round is bad. Like, this is a bad format.
This is not a week 15 thing. Like, this is what the format is. Like,
right, but I'm saying it has to change. Like, this immediately, like, after this year, like, this has to change, because this
is that what people are freaking out about today? Just the format? Because we've known the format the whole time.
I didn't think no one saw the ACC champ getting bumped down to 12. Like, I don't think anyone thought that was going to happen. Like, I don't think anyone thought before the year that Boise was actually going, that a group of 5 school was actually going to get a bye. That was something that people were like, wait, can that happen? Can they put a G5 school in a bye situation? The fact that they did it, they like that, there will be ramifications for giving Boise a first round bye. Like, this is how you get kicked out, and this is how you really change how this is all going to go. This is like a good reason to be really pissed off. Like, Boise State does not deserve a bye. Boise State does not deserve a bye. And like that, there's just no way around it. Like, they're a great story. Boise State should be a 11 or 12 seed in this format.
Would Clemson be favored over Boise on a neutral field?
100%.
I honestly don't know
100%.
that. But that's
Boise has an 80th strength of schedule? Like, an 80th?
I'm confused why the outrage is coming this week. Like, Boise State's been sitting in the top 4 on the playoff ranking show.
I think it's because it's official. You just see it, and you also, if you're a Tennessee fan, you see these slides, and you're like, so our path is we have to go to Columbus, then Oregon if we win that game, and then Texas, and then Georgia. That's ridiculous. Like, that's insane.
I mean, what is Ohio State's path? Basically the exact same thing.
I'm not disagreeing. Like, but Ohio State could have a case too to say that, like, that's a real, like, this is not a balanced format. This is not a balanced, reasonable format.
Well, yeah,
like,
they have to change the seeding. I feel like a bunch of people weren't paying attention all season. Like, this has been the format the whole time. So if that's what people are upset about, then yeah, sure. I've been saying that all along. But in terms of being upset with what the committee did today, I don't understand at all the people that like the committee did such a terrible job. Like, this was the format. Maybe the committee is the one that came up with this format. I'm not really sure if that's the case. Like, whoever came up with the format failed, but the committee makes the rankings, and the rankings slots the teams where they are. Like,
well, they should have. Like, it would have been in the best interest of Tennessee to slide down a little bit more. That's the problem. Is you're like, if you slide down to the 10 or 11, because there's really, like, how would they explain SMU going from, where were they, 3 to 11 for losing close to Clemson in the title game?
But
slide Tennessee
3,
down
though.
to 10.
They were like 8 in the rankings or something. They weren't 3.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, slide Tennessee down, or something. Like, I'm saying Tennessee is in a worse spot by being a little bit better, and Indiana has they could absolutely win at Notre Dame. I mean, they would still have a potentially Carson Beckless. We'll still see. That might be out by the time this gets posted in the morning. But I don't know. I'm looking at this bracket, and the part that annoys me is just like there's just no way to sugarcoat it. Like there's Tennessee fans who are oddly optimistic, like pretty optimistic about their chances in Columbus in 2 weeks. But my thing is like it's not really about Columbus for me. It's really just that you went 10-2 in a Power 2 league, and you're going on the road to Ohio State in the first round, and your treat is Ohio State, Oregon, and then like you shouldn't be playing the number 1 overall seed in the second round with the kind of season that Tennessee's had. Like that's just a bad
I strongly disagree. What has Tennessee proven? They're not some sort of juggernaut. Like this is what it's going to take to win a
I'm saying they're still the number 3 team in the SEC this year. They're the number 3 team, and they're playing like this is a path that Boise should have to be on. Is really what I'm saying. Like this is a Boise
are we just
path.
Still talking about the format? Like the format is what it is. Like everyone knows this format with the automatic bids is terrible. But like this is what.
No, the automatic bids is okay. I'm okay with the automatic bids. Like I am okay with like keeping that useful for conference championships. Like if you win, it's kind of like the college basketball thing, right? If you win your college basketball tournament, you're automatically in, but you don't go to a 1 seed.
Man, you don't have to tell me. This is literally what I said the day they came up with this format. Like, and I just guess everyone wasn't paying attention until the final rankings came out, and they're like, "Hold on now, the team that's number 13 is actually the 4 seed in the playoff."
It's crazy.
We've been talking about how flawed it is the whole time. So it's that part of it is bad, but it's like I think there's. In terms of like thinking that it's a gauntlet on that side of the bracket, I think it just comes down to your opinion of how good those teams are. Like there's Texas. Penn
Wait,
State
hold on. You're not making the case that the Georgia side is just as arduous.
No, I'm saying Texas could be a completely fraudulent team, dude. Like they haven't beaten anybody.
It's not about Texas though. Oregon's undefeated.
Yeah, Oregon is great. They're the number 1 seed. But I'm saying when it comes to the opinion of Ohio State and Tennessee and Texas versus a Penn State or a Notre Dame, like everyone just thinks those teams are better just based on their own biases.
But can't you say objectively the SEC number 3 team should not be playing the top 1 and number 2 teams in the Big Ten right out of the gate?
But Ohio State's not one of the number 1 or 2.
I mean, they are.
Teams
We know.
But they're not. See, that's exactly the point. You just hit the nail. You made my point for me. Your opinion is that Ohio State is maybe the number 1 or number 2 team in the Big Ten. They're the number 3 team in the Big Ten. And that's how it shook out this year.
Who played Oregon better?
But I'm saying I'm not giving an opinion. They were not in the Big Ten championship. The 1 and number 2 teams in the Big Ten were in the Big Ten championship.
But what I'm saying is like Tennessee is going to make a deep run. They're going to have to beat the number 2 team in the Big Ten to me, the number 1 team in the Big Ten to me, the number 2 team in the SEC, and then potentially the number 1 team in the SEC.
I mean, no, and it's going to be super difficult, but that's what happens. That's why it would be a Cinderella story. It would be an underdog because when you're not a top seed, the path for you is incredibly difficult in any bracket.
Penn State might get to the national title from ever getting tested. They might not get tested the whole way. Like they might get through the whole thing untested because there's a chance Notre Dame beats Georgia in the second game and Penn State gets Notre Dame and just wrecks them. And then they're just right there. Like Penn State, the path, I can't emphasize enough. Penn State, if they don't make the college football national championship with what they drew here, it will never be easier for Penn State to break through. There will never be a bracket for Penn State in the college football playoff that is this advantageous to make a run than it is for the Nittany Lions this year. Like Penn State should be in the national championship.
There's a lot of flawed teams in college football. What did Tennessee average? Like 23 points a game versus the SEC teams.
I mean, they hadn't given up 20 points in a football game in nearly a year.
Their defense was good, but their offense was not good at all this year. You look at Texas. Like Texas played. I mean, I'm counting Texas A&M as a ranked team. I don't think they're actually ranked. Although
they're not ranked right now.
They did come back.
No, they're not ranked.
They're not ranked. So, but if you want to count them as a ranked team, as Georgia and A&M being the only good teams they played, they averaged 16 points a game in those three in regulation in those 3 games. Like Texas is not anything impressive this year. Their resume was terrible. We have this opinion that Texas is this elite team. As a Georgia fan, I want to believe Texas is an elite team because we just shut that elite team down twice now defensively. So I would love for Texas to be elite, but they're really not. Like coming into that game, Georgia and Texas were both averaging 28 points a game. And Georgia had the toughest schedule in college football, and Texas had the easiest schedule in the conference, and that's just versus SEC play. So I think the bias, the opinions of who these individual teams are, is also throwing off. Like, obviously, the top 4, Arizona State and Boise State getting a bye, like, that's flawed, and we've known that's flawed for years, for the whole year. We should have, but Clemson is not going to be an easy win for Texas by any means. Like, I'm just saying, Texas has not been that good this year. Like, look at what Texas has been when they've played good teams. Like,
are we counting Clemson as a good team?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Clemson's had their same struggles when they play good
I think
team.
Vanderbilt could beat Clemson on a neutral site.
Maybe, but I'm just saying, like, we have this opinion of Texas based on their composite talent ranking and recruiting and all kinds of different opinions, but they haven't truly been an elite team for most of the season. Their defense has been really good, but I feel like they've been probably, them and Penn State, in terms of just being in like the top 5 for most of the season without any good wins. Like, our opinion is a certain way of both of them, and I'm not sure it actually like adds up to how good they are. Like, I think Penn State, I mean, they did prove that they didn't really they didn't really punish the conference title losers. Once I saw Texas and Penn State at 5 and 6, that's when I was thinking, like, oh, okay, they're the top 2 non-conference champions. That's what started to make me think SMU was going to get in. But then my buddy of mine, Alabama fan, was like, well, if Clemson is the 12, they wouldn't rank SMU ahead of Clemson. And it was like, oh, yeah, I think you're right. Alabama's got to be the last team in. So I was shocked by that I don't understand how Clemson can win the ACC and not be the 11 and SMU not be the 12. But I was glad they made the decision they did over SMU over Alabama. I'm kind of shocked they did. But I feel like people are giving them credit for, like, oh man, they made the tough decision, put SMU in there. Like, no, this was definitely the easiest decision to make. Like, this was going to piss off the fewest number of people, and they took the easy road. Like, it was going to be a lot more difficult to justify Alabama, and like the criticism you were going to get, it was so much easier. I think Clemson winning the ACC was a gift for the committee so that we didn't have to sit here and debate Ole Miss and South Carolina and Miami and Alabama for that final spot. Like, I think Clemson winning and stealing that spot, like, actually saved the committee.
I guess it just still feels like you're like, how does Indiana, who's 11-1 and that kind of schedule and didn't beat anybody good all year, and you have like mine wasn't Alabama because I was more of an Ole Miss guy, as I've said. Like, I think they're you can make the case the best team in the SEC this year. They did some dumb stuff, losing at home to Kentucky. They made their own bed. But at some point, you're like, I mean, part of me does feel like this is going to sound very Power 2-ish because I'm in this league, but I think not having 4 apiece of the Big Ten and the SEC is just, you're like, all right, man. Does anyone actually believe that SMU is better than Alabama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss? It's only a game. It's not like we're talking about multiple games here. This is one game separating them, and one loss, I should say. So I don't know. Like, I think the college football playoff would be better with one of those 3 we just mentioned. Like, because I think, honestly, here's part of the issue for me. SMU can't win the title. I don't think they will win the title. I think they're going to lose right out of the gate here to Penn State. Like, you put Alabama and or South Carolina and or Ole Miss in that spot in Happy Valley, that's a very, very different game. That's a very, very different feel. That is one that feels more 50-50, and I could see it going either way. And for me, as a viewer, I think, like, that game is, if we had to do a pick right now, what do you think is going to be the lowest rated first-round game? I think, like, that one's a lock, right? Like, Penn State, SMU. I think it's during the day, too. Isn't it a nooner? I think I saw. That's tough.
No, dude. People
that
are going to be so excited by this college
Penn State,
football
SMU?
playoff.
Who cares? Like, SMU's not winning that game. Like, there's just no chance. There's no intrigue. There's no, like, I don't want to watch it with second of that game.
Why can SMU not win that game?
They're just not going to win in Happy Valley. Penn State doesn't get upset like that at home. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, it's not.
We've never seen this. This is a college football playoff, man. Like,
I mean, if you want to talk yourself into SMU walking into Happy Valley,
I just love that you were one of these people that was just all about the 12 team and, like, the madness we were going to get, the chaos, the upsets.
No, what I'm saying is I want more people who I think can win the title. That's the best part about the NFL playoffs is that anybody can actually win because the rosters are very close, and that anyone can really win it all if you just get into the NFL playoffs. They want that model. The problem is they can't all win the title. Boise can't win the title. Arizona State can't win the title. Like, it's just not going to happen. So I would rather have another.
Why did we even expand it if we're like these teams can't win the title?
Well, no, I'm okay with it. It's March Madness. Guess what? George Mason can run the distance, but we all know that they're not going to win it all. Like, it's still like the Blue Bloods still ultimately win. The UConns of the world are still going to win at the end, but there is a lot of fun. That's what makes March Madness fun. It's like you want the upset early, like that first weekend, like that opening weekend upset is fantastic. Nobody actually wants to see Loyola Chicago make it to the Final Four in the national championship game. It's like a point. Like I'm okay with Boise winning a game.
Round upsets are great, and it's like you get the Sweet 16. Like, all right, get out of here.
That's what I'm saying, and that's what we all feel. It's like no one's gonna be happy if SMU wins 2 games here. Like I'm adamantly rooting against SMU. Like we don't want it. Like I'm good.
See,
like,
now that's
I don't want
where
it.
That's where I can't understand you there. If SMU beats Penn State and Boise State, it's like they justified putting them in the entire tournament.
They justified them, but I'm just still gonna be annoyed because Ole Miss could have won the title, South Carolina could have won the title, and I think Alabama could have won the title. I just don't think it. I don't know. I would rather have as many people who can win the title to make it as volatile as possible, where every matchup is just like a coin flip. There are some non-coin flip games here.
Yeah, I think as long as if we kind of keep this kind of most deserving kind of ideal, like. I think this is the best way to go because it's like I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day. Like, you think Alabama gets in the playoff? Or a buddy of mine's mom the other day, and I was like, "You think Alabama gets in the playoffs?" She's like, "I don't know why we would. We're terrible." And it's like that's how Alabama fans feel. Like they know what a good team looks like, and this team has 3 losses. Like they're not. This team is not a team that really deserves to play in the postseason. Like SMU. Say what you want about him. Also, we care about like the injured quarterback stuff, right? Like Jordan Travis, like Jennings was not the quarterback when they lost to BYU. So they only lost 1 game and it was a conference championship when he was the starter. Like I think that kind of matters. So I think I don't hate on SMU getting in there. I think it's
it's not them. Like they're doing everything they can. What I am saying is I think there should be 1 team getting in from the ACC. It should have been established. You get 1 from the ACC, 1 from the Big 12, 1 from the G5, and everybody. And then, I mean, I guess if you want to really throw it out because Notre Dame's not in a conference, then you can give them one of those. But I would have been okay with a mandate of a 4 SEC, 4 Big 10. Like, I think that probably should have been solidified.
See, I disagree there because I think there's years where there's only 3 good teams in the Big 10. And this year, maybe there was only 3 good teams.
It's a different league, though. It's just different money, different league, different talent, upper tier.
I don't know. I don't like anything like that clear of a formula that like doesn't allow.
I mean, that's where we're headed. Like with the 14 team playoff, like you're like, get ready to learn 4 teams apiece, buddy. Like that's coming down the pike.
14 teams is ridiculous. But like this notion that like, oh, well, now the lesson that's learned is that if you're an SEC team, don't schedule a strong non-conference. Like that's why Alabama or Ole Miss didn't make the college football playoff because of their strong non-conference schedule. Like you didn't make the playoff because you lost to Kentucky.
Well, I get what you're saying, but I think what they're saying is not that. It's that like I understand that the conference losses would ultimately did that, but the Boise situation of like they had the 80th ranked schedule and they still won their conference games and it didn't matter. The committee did not hold their schedule against them. They gave them a first round bye for playing the 80th schedule in FBS. So I think that's the broader point. So it's like, hey, yeah, if we lose our conference games, we understand that if we lose 3 conference games, we're screwed in the playoff. But also, if we have the 50th best, like there's no point in us risking it against like Tennessee plays Syracuse in Atlanta next year to open the season. Like I would drop that today. Like there's no reason to play that game next year because there's just no reason because it doesn't help Tennessee to win that game. It doesn't move the needle at all. It only can hurt them.
Will.
So that's the whole thing. It's like the committee will not see Tennessee any differently in the next year if they're 9-3 with a victory over Syracuse versus if that opener is against Mercer. Like That's what I think they're saying is the SEC schools are like, sorry, we're not playing you guys anymore because now we know if we drop these conference games, like they don't weigh 3 conference losses in the SEC the same as 2 conference losses in the ACC or whatever. But like they're talking about like the strength of schedule ultimately does not matter because Boise getting a first round bye over Clemson is a good indication that your strength of schedule does not matter. Like that is.
See, that's where I disagree. So 2 things. I'll get to the Boise State versus Clemson second, but in terms of the strength of schedule, if Alabama's 3 losses were to Texas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, and they beat Georgia, then yeah, they'd have an argument like this is garbage. We play in the best conference in America. They lost to 3 unranked teams, like 2 unranked teams, in Tennessee. Like Ole Miss lost to 3 teams that are currently unranked. Like you didn't lose because of the gauntlet of the SEC. Like Ole Miss didn't even have that tough of a schedule this year. They didn't play any of the other top teams except for Georgia. Like
they beat Georgia in a way that no one else has in the Kirby era, really.
And that was a great data point. But they didn't play Texas. They didn't play Alabama. They didn't play Tennessee. Like that was their one big game. And they beat South Carolina, who ended up being good. But they were also that was right after Sellers was coming off the injury too. I don't feel like that was even really the same. But they smacked South Carolina for sure. But it's not like all of these teams just had these gauntlet schedules and they just beat each other. Like I think that's kind of a false narrative. I think that's like something that could happen to the SEC, but that's not what happened this year. And if you look at if they just don't drop, if Ole Miss and Alabama just don't drop the Oklahoma and Florida games, they're in the college football playoff. And we're talking maybe 5 SEC teams getting in. Like I don't think it's such an overreaction, like almost playing the victim to think that the strength of the conference is why you're not in the playoff. Like Alabama and Ole Miss didn't take care of business against inferior competition like multiple times. Like it's no one's fault but their own.
Yeah. On the Georgia side,
other point, the Boise State Clemson thing. I was livid like 4 or 5 weeks ago when they were talking Boise State get one of these top 4 seeds, but once it became like Clemson being like the 14th, 15th ranked team for the ACC champion, like I really don't have any problem with Boise State being ranked ahead of Clemson. Like who's Clemson beat SMU and like basically no one else. Like that's better than anyone Boise State beat, but they lost 3 games. Boise State lost 1 and it was to Oregon. Like it's a what was the term they always use? Just a style competition. Like whatever. Like I've been leading the Boise State naysaying for a while and Ashton Genty for a while now. But in terms of like they're if it's just a normal playoff, normally seeded, like they should be higher seeded in the playoff than Clemson. They'd be like the 8-9 seed or something. I was looking at if there was no automatic qualifiers, and this is what you want basically. I changed this round.
I didn't say I didn't want automatic qualifiers. I'm okay with the automatic qualifiers.
No automatic buys.
Yes.
It would be the 1 seed Oregon would face the winner of 8-9 Indiana and Boise State. The 4 seed Texas would face the winner of 5-12 Penn State Clemson. The 2 seed Georgia would face the winner of 7-10 Tennessee SMU. Mm-hmm. And then the 3 seed Notre Dame would face the winner of 6-11 Ohio State Arizona State. Like that would be probably a much more even playoff. And that's what they have to do next year.
Yes.
But in terms of where the committee ranked the teams, I really don't have that big of an issue of who should be ahead of whom. Like, I don't like, is there anyone that's just like I think we were talking about last week, like Tennessee fans were furious that they're not getting that home playoff game. But is there any Tennessee fan that really thinks they have a better resume than Ohio State? Like,
I think it's close. Like, I don't think it's obvious one way or the other. I think if you're an Ohio State fan, you would have been like, I don't think you would have had a leg to stand on to be furious if you had to go to Knoxville. And like you said, like I think it's close, but I think also you lost as a 3-touchdown favorite at home to Michigan, like a team that's 7-5. Like Tennessee has nowhere near that loss. Tennessee's undefeated at home.
Arkansas?
It was on the road.
Yeah, but it's still near that loss.
It's different, man. Arkansas, I mean, they would give Michigan a game. And that was on the road. I'm just saying, like I
don't know what Arkansas would do week in and week out, honestly. But so yeah, maybe.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like it's close. Like you can sell me on like one way or the other, but
I haven't even looked at the bowl games. Do we have Arkansas, Michigan? Is that a Music City Bowl? It seems like that could be a matchup. We'll have to look at the bowl game.
Michigan's playing someone who they're playing Alabama.
Wait, Michigan's playing Alabama?
I think so.
No way they're in the same.
I'm pretty sure.
That's like a 9-3.
Yeah, they're facing Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl.
In the ReliaQuest. What was that? Is that the Outback Bowl that they changed?
Possible.
Or is the Gasparilla Bowl? That's Florida.
Well, Tony the Tiger now has a bowl.
I need to pull up the bowl.
I think it's Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, which is kind of funny.
Before we get off here, we'll have to like go a little quick rapid fire looking at some of these bowl matchups.
Well, from the Georgia bracket, what does this bracket mean for Georgia, Matt Green?
I would say if you are a Georgia fan, this is the exact bracket you would have handpicked if you could have done it. Like, obviously, I've been arguing that I don't know which of these teams are better, so that's why I'm not like.
This is unbelievable heel turn from you. This is disgusting. This is really, really disgusting work by you. This is nasty work from Matt Green.
I think, mainly
playing devil's advocate for 25 minutes to just agree with what I'm saying when we switch gears to from Georgia's perspective. This is nasty work, Matt.
That's great. I did, but ultimately, I think I agree with what you're saying. I just don't I'm not blaming the committee. It's like, this is how the cookie crumbles. It's like, everyone kind of fit pretty nicely in the seed that they were in. It's like, there's not too many arguments. I think one thing to your point, if you switch Ohio State and Penn State schedules this year and you switch everything about them, I bet you Tennessee is ranked higher than Penn State. Right. Yeah. But Ohio State, there's still a little bit of bias in terms of just how good, how loaded that roster is. But there's a reason that bias exists, because we do think Ohio State's loaded. But yeah, I think, like we talked about, Boise State has no business being one of those top seeds. That's who Georgia will get, most likely the winner of Penn State, Boise State, if they get all the way to the quarterfinal or to the semifinals. Wait, that would be the quarterfinal. Am I messing up right now? Yeah. Indiana, Notre Dame, Georgia gets the winner of, and then most likely Penn State in the semifinal. That's what would be the semifinal. That's probably what Georgia would have picked if they could have picked in these teams. But also, I think as a college football world, I think there's just perennial disrespect on Notre Dame, and Indiana, you got to prove something before college football fans nationally are going to respect you. So this Indiana team has been dominant in most of the games they've played this year. And obviously Coach Sig has a swagger about him, and this team kind of is different than Indiana's ever been. So also, do you know anything about Indiana Notre Dame series?
Not a whole lot.
I was looking it up earlier because in my head, I envision these teams kind of play every few years. It's not a rivalry, but every once in a while. The last time they played was 1991. And before that, it was the 50s. And the last, Indiana won one time in Bloomington, and it was the next 8 times they played, they were all in South Bend. It's a very weird series. So,
well, speaking of, do you know how many times Tennessee and Ohio State have played?
Just one time, right?
Yeah.
I think I heard that. When was that?
Eddie George, Peyton Manning in a bowl game. 1996.
Oh, nice. That sounds like a little Citrus Bowl.
That's a good question. I don't remember.
That sounds like a Citrus Bowl. Eddie George, Peyton Manning, both teams probably went 10-2.
That's a good question. I don't know what.
But yeah, so Tennessee, Ohio State, it's going to be a great matchup. Clemson, Texas, I think it's the first time they've ever played each other. So it's this is what I think the best part of getting the playoff was just getting a bunch of matchups that we don't see.
It was a Citrus Bowl.
Hey, there you go.
There you go.
So, yeah, in terms of what Georgia's prospects are for when they get to the playoff, and if Carson Beck is out, I feel like the fact that you still haven't heard anything about Carson Beck definitively seems a little worrisome. That Maybe it's a UCL tear. Who knows? I'm not going to speculate here, people. I haven't heard anything. But I swear, I watch a lot of football, sir, and I watch a lot of teams throw Hail Marys, and the quarterback does not get injured on every Hail Mary. This is 2 weeks in a row. The only 2 Hail Marys I can remember in Georgia's season off the top of my head. And Carson Beck gets hurt both times. Obviously was able to keep playing in the Georgia Tech game after that one. But
I mean, it's a dangerous play for quarterbacks because you're rearing back and like this kind of stuff can happen. I mean, It's a dangerous play for quarterbacks.
Yeah, for sure. So what that means for when Georgia gets they're the team that needed this first round bye, I think more than almost any team out there. It feels like, especially now that Beck has gone down. This team has just been like so like battered and beaten throughout the season. Like they've been through it, right? Like they've played how many of the current field of the top 12 teams? Georgia's played 4 of them, I want to say. Yeah. Is that right? Tennessee, Texas, Clemson, and is that it? That's it. And then Alabama was the one, I think, that was potentially going to get in that people were talking about. And obviously Ole Miss. But so they've obviously played their fair share of tough games. So now getting, almost a month off, January 1st. It's going to be 8:45, that last game of the night on the 1st. So definitely going to have to go ahead and get the second off from work. Can't be going in after that one. But yeah, it's it'll be exciting, man. The 12-team playoff. This is what the people wanted. I don't know if I wanted 12 teams. I think this would have been a solid year for 4, as I keep saying. Everyone seemed to hate on the top 4.
I don't know. Who's the 4 for you? Who would have been the obvious 4?
It's not an obvious 4, but you'd go 1 Oregon, 2 Georgia, 3 Notre Dame, and then you get just debate. Talk amongst yourselves. Figure it out. 4 Penn State, 4
That's
Ohio
terrible.
State.
That's a terrible foursome.
4 Texas. Oh, are you kidding me? You think Oregon versus Texas and Georgia versus Notre Dame would have been a bad Final Four?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh man, people would have watched.
People would have watched. I don't think it would have been good.
It would have been a lot cleaner if SMU could have pulled it out. That one-loss ACC champ could have gotten the 4 seed or something. But I mean I'm just saying. The teams that got left
Oregon,
out,
SMU, and a Beckless, Georgia, and who was the other one you threw out? And Notre Dame.
Notre Dame would be in there.
Oof.
But this is what I'm saying, just in terms of just what we are as college football people, and what we know like a championship team usually looks like. If that were the 4, like who is not getting picked? That's like, we got screwed this year. Is it 2-loss Ohio State, 2-loss Texas, or 2-loss Tennessee? It's like, yeah, sure. You got Indiana with 1 loss.
I mean, if
like
Texas got in at the 4 spot over Tennessee with their strength of schedule and everything, like that would have been a conversation.
I would definitely pick Tennessee over Texas in that scenario.
But they wouldn't get it.
That's kind of what
Texas
happened. I mean, that's what happened to Auburn in 2017. I mean, they were the 2 seed going to the SEC championship, and Alabama didn't play for it, was able to sneak in and get the 4 seed. That's Alabama rules. Maybe that doesn't apply to Tennessee, but
true.
Yeah, it's just a lot of hate. I've said it before. A lot of hate on the 4-team playoff. You're like, we should just go back to the BCS.
I mean, no, it's going to be better. Like, let me just my issue is more like the only big has to be changed immediately is just the automatic buys. That's just got to go. My main 2 is the automatic buys. Just seeing it in real time, seeing it official. You're just like, what have we done? We have made a huge error here. It's because now I have a problem with Boise and Arizona State, and they're great stories this year, and I don't want to have a problem against them. It's kind of like what I said about rooting. It's bad for your soul to be rooting against Indiana down the stretch here. It's they're a good story. But the problem is you got to fix this, and then I also think reseeding that has to be part of the conversation, to benefit the.
I don't think you need to reseed if you have just a normal.
But it's easy. Just reseed.
The NCAA tournament doesn't reseed. You got the seeds. The seeds are what they are.
All right, well then at least seed 1 through 12 based on who the bet. 1 through 12, 1 through 14 based on your rankings. Just do it based on your rankings. They get an automatic spot, but they don't get I don't know. That just seems like an easy one.
Yeah, I actually said the same thing in a group text with my friends earlier today. That was there's something about Boise State. getting a top 4 seed, like it changes the underdog dynamic.
Yes.
That now I'm like rooting against them, and it's like
Right.
they didn't deserve to be.
And I don't want to do that.
Seed.
They're a good story. Like, I don't want to do that, but now, like, I don't want to be annoyed at SMU's path having a better path than Tennessee, but they do. Like, SMU has a better path. Like, it is what it is. But I don't know. I think that's the thing. Is like Tennessee, we'll see what happens. And like we talked about, like the 12. You know what? I'm gonna be amped up to get for the game in Columbus in 2 weeks, and we'll see what happens. I think Tennessee's got a good shot of winning that game, and you just take it week by week. Like, you just take it. You're like, hey, let's just get through Ohio State and see what happens. You never know. That's why you play the games, Matt Green. Like, there's no question it's gonna be the most arduous. Like, look at Tennessee baseball. No number 1 overall seed had won since 1999 with Miami in the first year.
We're not talking Tennessee.
Well, I'm saying like like I had some thoughts of like, is it good for Tennessee to win the SEC tournament and to be the number 1 overall seed because they were there 2 years ago and got eliminated in the Super Regionals by Notre Dame, and just teams could not do it. Teams could not be number 1 for that amount of time, and Tennessee obviously wins it all and has an arduous road, and they're able to get through it. So we'll see how Tennessee football handles this, but I just think there's no question that Tennessee's road is tough. Like, there's just no way to sugarcoat it. I think that's kind of like where I'm at. And I'm like, let's just take it week by week. Going to Columbus is going to be fun. Like, Saturday night, like, it's going to be cold. It's going to be really cool atmosphere. Like, Tennessee, Ohio State, they never play. So that's one of the big wins from the 12-team playoff is teams that never play each other are going to get an opportunity to play each other in win-or-go-home format. So I think that'll be good. But, I mean, it is what it is. Like, there's just no sugarcoating it. Tennessee's got got a really, really hard road to running the gauntlet here. And that's just what it is.
Absolutely. And we have Indiana Notre Dame. That's the Friday night game on the 20th. Notre Dame 8-point favorite right now. Then the noon game is SMU Penn State on that Saturday.
Oof.
Penn State 8.5 point.
Does that get put on like the Big Ten Network? Can you just like take that one off television?
It's actually
like...
on TNT. I am this is news to me. TNT taking the college football playoff games. Clemson and Texas is actually also on TNT. At 4:00 that day, and then Tennessee, Ohio State.
Do they have college football broadcasters? Who's calling these games on TNT?
That's a good question. Well, TNT and CBS have had like little like partnership, right, with like the NCAA tournament. Like they show like games on TBS and
are we gonna get Ernie
TV.
Johnson
Everyone watches
calling one of these games?
Jokers.
Is Ernie Johnson calling one of these college football games?
We can only hope. We can only hope we get Chuck and Shaq on one of these games. But yeah, so those are 20th and the 21st, that first round, and then the next round is what, the 30, with the same thing, right? There's one game on the 31st and then the 3 games on the 1st, and then Georgia is the final game of that one. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I think it's unnecessary. I don't think we need these many teams to decide who the best team in college football is, but it'll still be a lot of fun, like you said, seeing matchups we never get to see.
Well, let's talk about the biggest game of the weekend here, Matt Green. Georgia, Texas. Georgia beats Texas for the second time. What was your strongest takeaway from this game?
Strongest takeaway, I don't know. This is they are SEC champs. That is my strongest takeaway. Like, this was just, I think there's overrated narratives in sports, right? But in terms of just this team having like the championship DNA and just finding ways to win games, like, I don't know. I'm starting to be a believer. Like, it feels like there's something to it. Like, every game this year, we talked about a lot how Georgia hasn't played a complete game, right? Every game this year, like when the offense has not brought in their A game, those have been the most impressive performances the defense has had. Like, every game, it's like they obviously not every game. Ole Miss, they didn't show up at all. But it's like this team has just found ways to win so many games, and you can never really count them out. Like, honestly, I was sitting 6-3 at halftime. I'm like, this shit's over. We got this in the bag. I was hoping we wouldn't be down 2 touchdowns at halftime. This team's been a second half team all year. 3 points. We've played like we've played so far. Like, Beck's gonna get things together. Oh, we'll be good. And then you see Carson Beck coming out of the locker room and Gunnar Stockton doing some high tempo type of activities, and you're like, wait, is Gunnar Stockton about to play in this game? And 6 drives for Gunnar Stockton. Georgia scored on 4 of them, 22 points, and they found a way to win this game. It was just, it was just kind of amazing the way they did it. I think the kind of the narrative going into this game was, maybe Texas is better than Georgia, maybe they're not, but everyone is confident Georgia can't do what they did to Texas the first time around. And they basically did to Texas exactly what they did the first time around. Like, it was the two best defensive performances of the entire season were both games against Texas. Had 6 sacks in this one, 15 tackles for loss. Probably the two best games of the season for the run game for Trevor Etienne were the 2 Texas games. Dalen Everett's 2 best games of the season were the 2 Texas games. Like, it was almost exactly what happened, except for Georgia didn't get the short fields, and they still found a way to just kind of win this game. So I tracked the some of these Texas's drives, because what was so weird about this game is just my initial takeaway it felt like every single play Texas had the ball was either they picked up 10 plus yards or it was a negative play. And so I looked at, they had 14 plays of 10 plus yards in this game and 16 plays of 0 or negative yards. And that's 40% of the 75 plays they ran either went for 10 plus yards or for negative yardage. So it was just like they moved the ball a lot on Georgia in the first half, but Georgia was just forcing so many negative plays. Like, this was the best game I think the defensive line has played the entire season. Michael Williams was just balling, and Xavier McLeod, probably the best game I've seen him play in a Georgia uniform. Like, they stopped the run again. Like, this team has been getting gashed ever since the Texas game, and a few games before the Texas game. Like I said, coming in, they were giving up 175 on the ground since the Texas game, and they gave up like 29 to Texas in the first one. And what was it this time? Like 31 rushing yards Texas had in this game. It was almost a carbon copy of how they did things the first time, except for some of those turnovers didn't turn into easy touchdowns like they did the first time. But in terms of like offensive production, the offense like moved the ball at a similar rate. They just didn't have the same short fields they did the first time. But yeah, I was just so impressed with this Georgia defense, and Gunnar Stockton coming off the bench, like, just, I don't know, finding a way to win this game with your backup quarterback. Like, it was so impressive.
To a point, right? Like, I think the defense was impressive. I think Gunnar holding onto the ball when he got blasted at the goal line is one that's pretty huge. Like, I mean, Georgia got some really fortunate voodoo luck with fumbles, like the ball popping out multiple times and diving on it
4 times.
Yeah, like that is some, I mean, those are important little things that get lost in the post game, where you're like, man, Georgia put the ball several times on the ground and we're able to get it back in there. I thought Trevor Etienne, obviously getting him back turned out to be a huge deal for Georgia. And he's going to be a huge factor the rest of the way. I mean, averaging 6 yards to carry. Him and Nate Frazier go over 100 yards, and that 3.8 yards per attempt against that Texas front is a little misleading, because the combination of Etienne and Frazier were almost 7 yards to carry with those two. So they were able to run the ball really effectively, and Texas wasn't. And Texas kept running it right up the middle with Wisner. Like, it blew my mind. Like, just kept going in the middle of this defense. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's my thing, is like, I think I said on our preview show, the reason there was multiple things. I thought it was going to be hard to beat Texas twice, just with their depth and their roster. But I thought Georgia was pretty banged up, and coming off that Georgia Tech game, like, there was just a lot of reasons as to why I was pretty dubious that Georgia would be able to do this. But I also thought Arch Manning, like, seeing him run and rush for that touchdown against Texas A&M, and then Sark and the staff seeing the amount of success that Haynes King had on the ground against Georgia, and how Georgia struggled with running quarterbacks all season, that would be something they would do. Like, Lagway, obviously, in the first half was finding success there. Like, I just assumed that we would see that. Like, I just thought we would see a lot of Arch, like a dual threat. Like, we would have Quinn at times, but we would also, because Arch had a run in this game, and he got like 5-6 yards, and you're like, okay, Arch is your best running back basically right now. He's able to find space. He's a big kid. I don't understand, because Quinn Ewers didn't have it, man. Quinn Ewers, 358 yards, but 27 to 46. He had some bad interceptions in this game. He wasn't very accurate with the football. It was just weird. It was a really weird game plan, because Moore and Golden had huge days through the air, but you couldn't run the ball at all on this Georgia front, and teams have been able to run the football on Georgia this year. And I don't understand why Arch was not a bigger part of this game plan. And it's like, you don't have to run him 24 times like Haynes King did a week ago, but especially when Quinn Ewers is struggling and at different times and your offense is kind of stuck in the mud at different points, the fact that Arch Manning was not a factor on the ground blew my mind, because that was something I thought for sure that they would do. It's like, hey, Arch is our secret weapon. He's going to be used in a Tebow-like fashion here down the stretch. We found something here. Let's do this 5 to 10 times a game just to see what that looks like. And they just didn't. And that was pretty stunning to me.
Yeah, I was surprised we didn't see a little more of him. He just had the one carry, and then he had the little trick play where they snapped it through his legs. That was impressive. I think Florida tried to run that. I think that may have been the same play when they went for it on that 4th down last year, and it just blew up and it failed miserably, like second quarter, and then it was kind of opened the floodgates after that. But yeah, I mean, I questioned like the backup having the same kind of impact like a Haynes King had, because I think there's just something different when the quarterback's in there, play in, play out, and anything in the offense is open. Like Arch Manning just being like kind of a gadget guy, like it could have worked, but I don't know.
I would have tried it. It's not like you're losing anything here. It's not like Quinn Ewers is lighting the world on fire.
They did move the ball a lot. I mean, the guy threw for 350 yards in this game. Like
he threw the ball 46 times.
That's true, but they were getting a lot of chunk plays in this game, and they were just George was forcing a lot of negative plays at the same time. Like, I mean,
a lot of missed field goals.
2 missed field goals, 6 of 18 on 3rd down. 10 of those were for 10 plus yards. And I think there was like 4 or 5 that were for like 3rd and 20 something. Like it was kind of insane how many negative plays Georgia just kind of continued to force, even at be a 25-yard gain and then a 5-yard sack, and then they'd get behind the sticks.
But, I mean, Texas had 4 different players who had pass receptions of over 20 yards. Georgia had 0. And that's one of the things I still have coming out. It's just like the gunner, like if Carson Beck is not able to go in the CFP, I don't think, I just think this, I don't think this is going to go well, because Georgia doesn't have the horses out wide to really help Gunnar Stockton in this spot, because Arian Smith obviously doesn't have a big game. Oscar Delp, 3 catches, 23 yards. Ben Urasek 2 for 21. Dominic Levick 3 receptions for 0 yards. Like the receiver situation is still pretty bad here at Georgia, and you're going to bring in potentially a quarterback who is mostly a run first guy. I don't know. Like I understand like he was a gamer and he played solid in this game, but it was a lot of side to side stuff. He wasn't taking any deep shots down the field. Like his best thing was like he stood in the pocket, didn't do anything crazy, and obviously used his legs in effective fashion. And I think that's what you're going to see is like he's going to take off. I mean, he had 8 carries in this game, and he didn't put like
it's your backup quarterback. Like
but he's so different. What I'm saying is like Carson Beck can at least throw guys open. Like Carson Beck has elite arm talent still.
Yeah, Carson Beck is a good player. This is the backup.
What I'm saying is this is the complete opposite. Like Gunnar is the absolute opposite, and to have to do all this install, like these two could not be more different in terms of skill set. So I'm just curious what's realistic in terms of time. Like you're gonna have 2 weeks here, but I don't know. Like you have to throw out everything if Carson Beck can't go, because it's not like going from Carson Beck to Jake Fromm where the offense is mostly the same, or him to Puglisi, where I'm gonna go ahead and guess.
I mean, Gunnar Stockton's been the backup for 2 years,
but he's completely different. You would agree, right? Like Gunnar Stockton,
of course. But I'm sure there's been a plan for how he'll be used when he comes in the game and you start utilizing.
But for a full game,
calling QB draws and everything like that. Like, hey, that's what Sam Pittman always talked about with Kirby Smart. Like Kirby Smart's prepared for anything. Like he has his fifth string long snapper. Like he knows what's going to happen if a contingency plan for your contingency plan, right? Like I don't know anyone who's saying Gunnar Stockton is the MVP and willed Georgia to victory in that game. Like Georgia found a way to win. I don't think it's because of the quarterback, but this dude was thrown into the fire. Like the first meaningful snap he's played in college football were the second half of the SEC championship when your team's down 3. And he made enough plays for Georgia to win. I mean, that's what he has to do, is basically be that guy that kind of runs for some first downs with his legs and it completes the easy passes, things like that. There's also the element of the running quarterback changes the running lanes for the running backs. Like it completely changes the offense. I don't know if you remember like when Tebow took over in Denver, it was like Willis McGahee started like a reemergence in his career, right? Like Willis McGahee was just having some of the best games he had in years, because now the team is pausing for a second to see what that running quarterback is going to do. So I think there is if there's a team that can just find a completely different way to win, I mean, wouldn't you say it's Georgia? Like they're the team that beat Kentucky 13-12, like, and they also went 41-34 with Alabama and like threw for like 500 yards and made this crazy comeback. Like they're one of the teams in college football. And then the first time they played Texas, just a dominant defensive performance. And this one as well. Like this team has won in so many different ways that, yeah, it's going to be super difficult for Georgia to win a national championship if it's got to be Gunnar Stockton as the quarterback the whole time. But if there's anyone you would bet on to find a different way to win, it's Georgia. And also we've talked about this. This was one of my arguments for weeks now. If Georgia was with Carson Beck in this college ball playoff, is that no one was going to have a quarterback advantage over Georgia in this playoff. Like there's just not that game changer quarterback. Like, yeah, you could split hairs if you think Quinn Ewers is better than Beck or something, or if you think I don't even know, Will Howard
the best
or
quarterbacks
someone,
aren't there.
or
Shador is
Dylan
not
Gabriel.
in this CFP.
Say that again.
Shador is not in the CFP. Yeah, you can make the case a
Exactly.
lot. Cam Ward is not in the college football playoff.
Those are like the two game changers out there that could will a team to victory. Maybe Nico starts to become that guy that he's kind of been.
I'm not putting that on Nico yet.
Yeah,
That's
like I'm not anticipating it.
He's the only underclassman Power 2 quarterback in the whole thing.
Say that again.
He's the only underclassman Power 2 quarterback in the whole dance.
But in terms of the quarterbacks here, if one of these guys channeled his Stetson Bennett and put up the huge big game college ball playoff numbers, just kind of surprising everyone, Nico would be one of the least surprising ones. Do you know what I mean?
I just don't want to put that on
surprising,
him.
But
I don't want to put that on him.
People have kind of been waiting for him to do that. That's why he's got the 5-star billing and everything, you know, and he's flashed at times. But yeah, it's going to be tough if Georgia does it. ETN in this game, like this dude was just everything advertised. His run in this game reminded me of the James Cook run in the 2021 national championship. It was right after Jalen Carter blocked the field goal. And then the first play of the drive, James Cook goes for like 50 yards, gets tackled at like the 10, 15-yard line. Like that was the play that changed the game to me, because so at that point, Georgia scored on their first drive of the second half. And then what they forced let me see, I got it pulled up. Then they didn't score on the second drive. So this was the third drive right after Texas had missed the field goal. They didn't block it, but they missed the field goal. Then the very first play, ETN breaks that 48-yard run. It was just like, it kind of felt like Georgia took control of the game at that point. And so the fact that this team has been 15th in the SEC in rushing, they haven't been the elite defensive unit that they've been in years past, and they're bullying Texas on the line of scrimmage for now the second time this year. It's a really encouraging thing that this team finds different ways to win. And also, we haven't even mentioned the fake punt. How about Kirby Smart with the fake punt, dude? Like 13-13 with 12 minutes left on your own 30. And also sick little play, Drew Bobo, little shovel pass from the center with the up man, whatever you call him. But yeah, that was a game changer. Like the 10-minute drive, was there 13 minutes, I think, when they got the ball back and left in the fourth quarter, and take 10 minutes off the clock roughly. Like Georgia shortened the game, and they given the team that was on the field on Saturday night, like that's how they had to win the game, and they did it. They threaded the needle that they had to thread to win the game that way. Like maybe Kirby was like, you know, this is what teams have been doing to us all year. Maybe we should do that and just keep our offense on the field for 9-10 minutes at a time.
Yeah. Well, hey, win's win. I'm curious how it all unfolds for Georgia, but I think the fact that they got through all of that, but I mean, it was kind of wild that Kirby like went after Greg Sankey in his post gamer, and it's also like Greg Sankey doesn't schedule these games, so it didn't even make any sense. Like it was one of those where you're like, I don't even understand like what he's angling at here. Like Greg Sankey, that's not his job. But sure. And also the world, like no one does the world's out to get us quite like Kirby Smart. Like no one does the 7-5, 8-4. Like nobody believes in us. We were on the road for 2 months.
Against us
I love, though, the
sir.
most Georgia thing ever is to complain about not having a good schedule for like 6 years. And then you finally have a good schedule. And then you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't know this is what it was going to be like. I didn't know that having a good schedule meant it was going to be this. And it's just kind of funny that Georgia fans have longed for this kind of schedule for a long time. You were on this podcast talking about how much you were looking forward to this.
Georgia fans complaining about their schedule?
Yeah, I think a lot of them have been complaining. And I mean, it's also just the Kirby factor of like complaining about it. I'm like, what are we doing?
Absolutely. And this has been like the most fun I've had through 13 games in a Georgia season.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's been fun. Like, why are we complaining about this?
2 years.
Georgia's gotten a bunch of important games here. Like, you got to buy. Like, Georgia fans have never had. Like, was this not the most? Like, you had so many games this year that were crazy, and we're not even to the playoff yet for Georgia. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not complaining. I don't know who these fictitious Georgia fans, these strawman Georgia fans you're creating. I don't know.
I guess I'm more extrapolating the Kirby aspect of it because I just thought that was very silly. Like that post gamer, I thought it was a bad look. I'll just go ahead and say
he sent us on the road for the whole season. So
yeah, you're like
couldn't get any home games.
Tennessee didn't play a key home game until like October 12th. Like, what are we talking about here?
They also didn't play a road game for like a month and a half or something.
But that was after. What I'm saying is their schedule was weird too. It's the same point where Georgia was at home for a while at the end here, and they were on the road for a while in the middle. Tennessee was on the road to begin the year. Like, Tennessee didn't have a key home game until Florida.
They played like one. They didn't play like one good team. Like,
I mean, they played at Oklahoma where Alabama got crushed. And they also played.
Are you really flexing?
They were ranked at the time.
Right
Oklahoma
now?
was ranked at the time. That's a big win.
They were ranked at the time. Don't be giving me ranked.
Georgia beat Kentucky 13-12 in Lexington.
That was a bad performance. I'm not flexing.
Kentucky's worse than Oklahoma. What I'm saying is
I'm not flexing that Kentucky win.
I'm just saying.
I'm saying Georgia Tech beat Florida State. Is that a top 10 win on the season? Beating 2-10 Florida State. Like, we know what Oklahoma became. Like, they weren't a good team.
Well,
that's why the Alabama lost.
Ireland was Georgia Tech country. We all knew that. That was basically a home game for Georgia Tech. Like, we were saying that all summer, where it's like Georgia Tech.
Ireland, that was a home game?
Yeah, we were saying the Noles are walking into Georgia Tech territory.
They can't have the home field advantage in Atlanta games, much less in Ireland.
Oh yeah, that game's in Atlanta next year, right? Like it's always in, but it's in
Mercedes-Benz. Yeah, Georgia Tech.
Which is going to be.
Hey, I wish we do the Friday night thing. Man, I was down with the Friday night Black Friday thing. Most watched Georgia Tech game of all time. I'm here for it, man.
Just move the Egg Bowl back. Like, I'm here for it too. I think the Friday night Georgia Tech, it was a good idea. I think that was a good look. But move the Egg Bowl back to Thursday. That was a huge mistake. Huge mistake. Nobody watched it this year.
Despite what Chase Thomas is trying to do here and try to find the most negative angle of Georgia's SEC championship as possible.
What is the negative angle?
Just
y'all got the better bracket.
Georgia should be so furious of having to play.
You played an extra game and lost your quarterback and All-American punter. What are we talking about?
We got the 2 seed in the playoff. It's all worth it. SEC champs, 3rd SEC championship of the Kirby Smart tenure. Like, this is.
Hold on. Would you have taken a loss? Would you have taken a loss if it meant that Beck and Thorson were fine?
And Georgia, if I can guarantee Georgia gets what seed Texas got, but I don't think Georgia gets Texas.
Well, even if, let's say they get SMU spot, guess what? That's still a great bracket.
If Georgia gets the 11 seed or something, no. I'm going SEC championship all day
with Gunner and no Thorson.
Yeah, I mean, you got to win the SEC championship. Like, you got to. Wow. Now Georgia's gonna have like a month off.
I need to bookmark this. I need to bookmark this for a couple weeks from now.
I'm not like super confident that Gunner Stockton is like a good player or anything, but like, I think Georgia can find a way to beat these teams that are on their schedule.
I'm going Puglisi. I'm taking these 2 weeks to get.
I mean, Jaden Rashada has more experience than Puglisi.
I'm okay with that too.
Yeah,
but I think the guys are all about Gunner. Seems like he has the locker room. Gunner's a locker room guy. It feels like post game seemed like he's a.
That's what's going to happen in this era of like the transfer portal. This is a guy who's like a top 100 recruit that's been around for like what 3? Is this his 4th year? Like maybe a third year sophomore or something.
Yeah, I think Brock was a year ahead of him. I think Brock was the year before.
Yeah, Vandergriff I think was the 2020 class. No. Yeah. The 2021 class was the one that was more affected by COVID, right?
Yes.
2020 was already in the barn. But yeah, so
Correct.
I think Vandergriff was the 2021 class.
Yeah. But we'll see. Like I said, I think he's well liked clearly. And I think the guys rally around him, but I don't know, man. I think it's jarring.
That's all you can do in the middle of a game. If you're putting this
No,
quarterback in,
hold on. I don't know. What I'm saying is
around.
post game and just seeing how his teammates were around him. I don't know. I think Gunner's got juice in the locker room. I think he's a teammate favorite in the locker room by Georgia players. It's my gut.
I think those quarterbacks that use their legs and I think he's been known. I could be mistaken. I think in the spring games, he's a non-contact jersey and stuff. So he's down to, get hit and that sort of thing. More of a blue collar kind of guy. So yeah, I think players tend to respect those kind of players.
Yeah. All right, Matt Green. Well, that's all I've got. Let's go over our pick'em weekend because this is it until the playoff. We're not doing bowls. Too many opt-outs, everything else. We're not adding bowls into our pick'em. We're doing the playoff to extend our playoff. But what is our regular season finished number here, Matt Green?
Oh man, I don't know if I added this up, sir. Let me see here. Let me see. There was 9 games. That means you went 6-3 overall. So I imagine I did not make up any ground overall. Because I went, let me see here. I went 5-4 on the final weekend. Those smaller games. If I would have held it to just the Power 4, I beat you in the Power 4. I would have gone 3-1. You went 2-2. But yeah. So on the season, overall, you finished 120-58. I finished 117-61. And then if we want to do this live, who covered the spreads? Georgia, Oregon. I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on against the spread, or if you start talking, I can try to add this up. But yeah, because I don't even remember all the scores of those smaller conference games. So I'll update the people next week. You definitely had a strong performance though. So you picked. Let's see. Penn State would not have covered the spread.
Okay, we'll do this. This is we can't do this live on the pod.
Okay,
I have to put an executive producer here decision. We can't add this up at the
fair
end
enough.
of this
Fair
program.
enough.
We'll have it ready for you on Wednesday, and we'll probably do a theme episode because there's no games this weekend outside of Army Navy, and we'll pick that one too. We'll pick Army Navy this weekend and get ready for. Oh, go ahead.
What bowl games excite you, sir?
None.
None? You're not liking any of the bowl games?
No, I don't care.
Not Georgia Tech, Vandy, and the Birmingham Bowl.
Who's playing? I think that's going to be interesting. Is NIL and part of it? Are there less opt-outs? Guys getting paid more to play in these games? I don't know. Are we going to see less opt-outs this year? I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. We got
Does Jackson Dart play in the Ole Miss game?
Iowa State, Miami, and the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Miami, Ohio, and Colorado State in the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl. So BYU and Colorado
State quietly had a good year.
BYU and Colorado could be an interesting one, but right.
Wait, Travis Hunter
BYU
Shedeur. Colorado?
Travis Hunter and Shedeur aren't playing in the
No,
bowl
hold on. There's no way it's BYU Colorado.
Yeah, in the Alamo Bowl.
Can you do the same conference?
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
Has that ever happened? I didn't think that was a
What
thing.
Is that? BYU and Colorado. No, that says BYU Colorado in the Alamo Bowl. That's
weird. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, Illinois, South Carolina. I don't know. There's we'll have to. I guess there will be no good bowls when you got 12 teams in the playoff. So this is just part of the deal. This is what happens.
Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to you in a couple days.
Yes, sir.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.